welcome to the Missouri History Museum's first virtual homeschool day and one of our virtual craft rooms. For May 2020, we are celebrating the 200th birthday of James Eads. My name is Carla, and today I'm going to teach you how to make your own treasure box and magnetic poetry kit. Now, what do these things have to do with James Eads? When James was 13, he and his family survived the sinking of their steamboat as they arrived to St. Louis for the first time. When James was 19 years old, he worked on a steamboat called the Knickerbocker, where he cleared obstacles and helped secure the boat to shore. He learned a lot about the river doing this. Well, one day, the boat was ripped apart on a snag. That's usually a submerged tree or something like that, and it sank. Once again, he survived, but this gave him an idea. He could make money by salvaging the cargo from sunken boats. Ship owners and insurance agencies were already doing this, were paying wreckers to do this, and laws at the time also allowed anything on the bottom of the river after 5 years to become the property of whoever found it. So at 22, Eads designed a salvage boat with a diving bell. Now this bell was actually a whiskey barrel that he weighted with lead, and he rigged to an air pump and fitted with a seat inside. So James found two boat builders to build his boat, and his salvage business was born. He salvaged items lost from sunken ships up and down the Mississippi River. He learned a lot about the river's currents during his dives, and he even earned an honorary title of captain. The fire of 1849 destroyed 23 steamboats. Well, this was a big opportunity for James Eads. He eventually earned a fortune. He built more salvage boats, and I'll show you one of his salvage boats in this book called Great River City by Andrew Wenko. And he added pumps and equipment to allow him to raise sunken boats. You could say he was a real treasure hunter. In 1853, he retired from diving because it was very taxing on his health, but he continued to buy snag boats and convert them to salvage boats. In 1857, he retired again, but his career was far from over. When the Civil War broke out in 1861, he was called upon by President Abraham Lincoln to build these ironclad gunships or warships for the Union to use along the Mississippi River. And later, he built a bridge, which he's most famous for today. So now let's make a treasure box in honor of James Eads. So the first thing you're going to need is a box, preferably one with a lid. Here's some examples of boxes that you can use, like an old jewelry box, a knit tin, or for this one here, I actually used a tea box. And I'm gonna kind of show you how I did these things. For this box here, I just covered it with tissue paper and added some stickers to the front. But if you have tissue paper, you want to do this, I would suggest adding just a plain piece of paper to the front and the back to cover up the words, because the tissue paper is pretty see-through. So then you can decorate it any way you like. I just happened to do Happy Birthday for James Eads. This one here is just an old jewelry box that I decorated with some markers, and I put a ribbon around the edge. And this one here is the tea box that I used. I just cut this little lip off that you see here to make it smooth across the front. But the first thing you want to do is cover your box with paper, construction paper, scrapbook paper, any kind of paper you have. And it helped me to minimize the seams by making a bit of a template. So what I did is I actually opened the box, started like this, and just kind of traced around it. Also traced the sides, and then kind of rotated it around like this to make my template, and it kind of looks a little bit like that. That way, when you put it together, you can start like this. Oops, I'm having trouble here. Go like that, put it around, and like that. Now, I would suggest using tape to secure it as best you can, and then maybe glue stick. If you do use glue, I would use a paintbrush to smooth it out, or as I do, I fold up a piece of construction paper and put the glue on, and then just kind of spread it out so it's nice and smooth, because the construction paper does tend to pucker, which you can, I don't know if you can see that on the back there, but it will pucker a little bit. So once you get it all covered with construction paper, you're ready to decorate it, and you can do that any way you like. I just added some strips of paper. If you want to add a strip, you can and just add it on like this, and then hold it and pinch it so that the seam is nice and tight, and wait till the glue dries. All right, so now we're going to move on to our poetry kits. What does poetry have to do with James Eads? Well, the Eads Bridge inspired many people. Poet Walt Whitman actually was visiting his brother in St. Louis while he was recovering from a mild stroke, and he used to walk down to the river every day to see it in different light. He wrote in his journal that I'll read this to you. "I have haunted the river every night lately, where I could get a look at the bridge by moonlight. It is indeed a structure of perfection and beauty, unsurpassable, and I never tire of it." That was written by him in 1879. There was also a local, very prolific local poet named Louis Daniel Brodsky, who wrote many poems about St. Louis, including 8 poems about the Eads Bridge. These are the last 2 stanzas of one of his poems called "The Soul of Eads." "Tonight I've inherited the soul of James B. Eads. I am science, civil engineering, that ground tributary, the Mississippi River, the forces of nature touched by his mathematics, the colossal Eads Bridge itself, spanning the rapid currents of my imagination." You can use these ideas for your poetry kit, or you can write your own poem, story, or even a letter about the Eads Bridge. James Eads and his first wife, Martha, were often separated during his work, and they would often write letters and sometimes poems to each other. So you can learn more about their letters and communication with each other by researching the collections about James Eads on our website. So the first thing you're going to do is write or draw whatever you want, and then you're going to make a copy of it, because we are going to be cutting out all of the words or your pictures up so that you can put them in your kits. So here's an example of some that I wrote. Happy birthday, James Eads. You can buy craft magnetic sheets at a craft store, but you can also use maybe some old magnets that you have around the house. Some of these come in the mail for free. This was a Cardinals magnet, and I had some just different advertising magnets you might find. But if you don't have a magnet, that's fine too. You can just use regular construction paper. So the first thing you want to do is probably take a piece of paper and measure out how much space you have on your magnet, which is what I did with the Whitman quote, which is what I'm going to use for my kit. So you stick it, you can kind of measure it out, cut it out, and then write or draw your picture in that space, so that way you know you have enough space on your magnet. If you have a sheet of construction paper, it can be any size you want. So what you're going to do then is glue your paper onto your magnet. If you have clearer paper, you might want to rip off the ad, which I did on this side, you can see. And that way you won't be able to see through. But I have some cardstock, so it's a little bit thicker. And then I'm just going to use some glue stick to glue it on. So I would glue that on, stick it on there, and then cut out each word individually. Now, if you have a picture, or if you're writing a story, another thing you can do, especially if you're using construction paper as your background, you can cut it up into different shapes and make a puzzle. So the important thing is that there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can be as creative as you like. If you're using a mint tin, you can also stick your magnets onto the inside of your lid. And I even cut out a sheet of paper as a backdrop, so you can do that. So now you're ready to, once you have your kit, or your stories or your pictures cut up, you can store them in your treasure boxes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please check out the other craft videos that we have today, as well as more online learning opportunities by visiting our website, mohistory.org. Bye, everyone.